Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Avatar Rewatch video. This one's going to be for episode 9 from book 1 Water, the Waterbending Scroll. Another JM animation animated episode, and yeah, this for me starts off a chain of 3 episodes that are definitely some of the weakest in the series. Like, this run of 3 episodes is probably the show's kind of weakest 3 episodes in a row. In that, if you watched my top 5 worst or top 5 bottom 5 Avatar episode list from the end of last year, you will probably remember that 109, 110 and 111 are all on that list in my bottom 5. So yeah, this is my 3rd least favorite episode of the show, if I remember correctly, and yeah, a lot of reasons for that. The main one being that it starts off a kind of trend with basically the series from episode 9 until basically episode 17 of most of the episodes kind of forgetting that we kind of have to rush to get to the Water Tribe, that we've got a bit of a time scale going on here, that we should be doing things a little quicker than we are right now. This one, obviously attempts to address that, and at the start of the episode, Aang's panicking a bit. Katara says, I'll teach you the little bit of waterbending that I know just to get you started. But even then, just the fact that they go to the port and they kind of start looking around the shops, I get that they're there to search for supplies, but where's the intensity, the urgency with what you've just been presented in the previous episode? Why aren't we beelining it to the Northern Water Tribe to really get things done? Because, mastering an element, that's going to take a long time, let alone doing 3 elements. Why aren't things a little bit more intense? So, it's not as big of a problem in this one because they actually do try to address what just happened immediately. The other problem with this episode would be the fact that, yeah, this is the first time Aang does waterbending that's not Avatar state waterbending. And the problem presents is basically for episodes after this that waterbending is not a problem for Aang. And it means that there's no plot basically in the series from episode 8 until they actually get to the Northern Water Tribe. And it makes this kind of chunk of episodes feel very extended out, that they don't have the greatest idea for any sort of continuity stuff between now and then, in that there's some good episodes. 12-13 is good, Deserter, there's episodes that are really good between now and the finale. But imagine how this stuff would have been if there was, say, a plot that happened, say at this point in time. We just get this thing, but then something else turns up where there's a plot that happens that you understand why they're not beelining it for the Northern Water Tribe, why we stick around for a little bit to do something else. And I think the waterbending and Aang potentially having some sort of an issue with it could have been that plot. Because as they present it here, they basically make it a joke that okay, Katara starts to teach Aang waterbending, he gets the moves that Katara took ages to learn really easily, he's a prodigal waterbending, no problem whatsoever. And then when they get to the Water Tribe, of course, which I'll discuss of course in the episodes towards the end of this season later on, he basically is just said to be okay, he's skilled at waterbending, he just doesn't apply himself as well as a student as Katara does, and that's why kind of Katara ends up surpassing Aang and being his proper waterbending teacher after book 1. But fundamentally, no issue with Aang and waterbending. And this is something I always say when I bring up this episode and this kind of weakness with the series. The movie actually did this right, at least attempted to do this right, of create an issue for Aang with learning waterbending by connecting it with his other issue this book, and that being him being someone from out of time, that he is from 100 years ago. Only Bumi is basically left alive from his kind of generation, and he's lost all of his people. And I think they should have made the same connection in the show here that they do in the movie, that being that part of waterbending is letting your emotions flow like water. And Aang potentially struggling with the loss of his people so much that he can't let his emotions flow and he can't waterbend as effectively as he should be able to. that would have been perfect, because it then gives another reason for episode 17, the Northern Air Temple, to be all the more meaningful of an episode, in that, like, that is basically Aang realizing that, like, while the airbenders, the other air nomads, are gone, there are still people out there who kind of represent the air nomad spirit living there, and that there is always hope for the future through himself and what he can do going forward. I would have loved to see something like that, where maybe 17 is what gets him past it, or maybe in the Northern Water Tribe he is helped in some way by Paku or whoever, the spirits, whatever way you want to do it, and you kind of have a big moment where, in the middle of all the action going on in the finale, that's when he finally gets waterbending, because you can obviously establish that, like, fundamentally he knows the techniques, he just is struggling with making it all flow together, and you can immediately have him apply all of that in this moment where he fully accepts what happened to his people, and, you know, has this big emotional moment. The problem with this episode is that they just so casually have Aang be like a waterbending expert, basically. And I get, you know, he's only doing basic moves here versus Katara, who's had to teach herself these moves, but it really feels like this big missed opportunity where they took it down a more comedic road to make a little tiny arc within this episode of Katara being annoyed at how fast Aang is progressing versus her, which doesn't really mean anything after this episode, versus where they could have gone with this, addressing the overall problems of this book and what it didn't have in the middle, that being any sort of a plot after episode 8 up until the finale. I really feel that this is a problem with book 1 that they should have attempted to do something with. Just give something more to Aang's waterbending training, beyond just, we have to wait till we get there for Aang to learn more, because Katara's taught him everything that he can learn right now. It's just, it feels just like, what was the plan here? And, you know, it makes, like, book 2 and 3 feel like very different things, and that they very clearly had them planned out. Aang has this problem with earth, this problem with fire, and water. He already knows air, and water is just like, okay. And, you know, as I said, that there was a clear option to go with it. The other weakness of this is obviously that we never really, because we never have a focus on someone like truly learning waterbending, we never really get the greatest insight into the philosophy of waterbending like we do with the other elements. Because, like, with Earth, obviously Toph gives the whole idea of being strong and steady. Zuko ultimately gives Aang the kind of truth behind firebending through all the dragons, and then, you know, how they really learn about it, that it's life and not just destruction. With waterbending, it's left quite vague, in that, like, okay, it's about emotions. There's this pull and pull aspect related to the moon, but they never fully get into the whole idea of, like, no, it's an element that is very much about emotions and how you connect with them, and when you really let waterbending, you know, and let your emotions take hold, you can do very powerful things. Like the whole reason they found Aang in the ice is because Katara got very annoyed and waterbended so powerfully that she freed up what Aang was trapped in to allow him to come out. So there's a lot of little things like that I think is a problem with this episode. And then I think, you know, overall the actual plot of this episode, what actually happens, it's fine. You know, it's like they find a waterbending scroll, they have to steal it from the pirates because they're charging so much from it. The pirates come after them. Zuko ends up coming into contact with the pirates, finding out that they were in contact with Team Avatar. They team up to capture Aang and Katara and so on to get the waterbending scroll back. When everyone's captured, Sokka reveals that Aang's the Avatar, you know, and then that causes the two enemy factions to fight with each other as Team Avatar get away in the whole melee that goes down. It's a fine, you know, idea for an episode, and it's ultimately fairly fun with, like, the pirates. Obviously they have some fun with that, with Aang doing the pirate accent the whole time, some of the pirates being very eccentric characters. It leads to some very cool action because the pirates there's such a variety of, like, skills within the pirate kind of group here, and just seeing everyone come together in the end and the big fight that takes place, it's a cool action scene, definitely, that happens towards the end. It's very well animated and well done. It's just that it's ultimately fairly like uneventful in that, like, yes, the pirates come back and they do something quite interesting with them later on. It's just, I think fundamentally they just never really address like piracy in the Avatar world. They never really go into it all that much. You know, I think Boomy and Korra mentions a few things about pirates. They're mentioned very offhandedly, but never really addressing like, is there actually a huge piracy scene on the waters in the world if you go into that thing, or what? Um, but yeah, at least there's some nice moments, as I said, of just like that fun moment in the with all the smoke bombs going off, and Aang is just like, I can't see anyone, so he just airbends all the smoke away, realizes he's right in the middle of like 6 guys surrounding him, who didn't realize Aang was in the middle of them, and then just immediately just like to get all the smoke back together to be hidden again. That was fun. Katara in the middle of all this action, finally mastering the water whip, taking Aang's advice on board, and just accepting that like they can both learn from each other. That was nice. The first stages, I suppose, of like Katara is actually a pretty good teacher for Aang in terms of how she approaches this sort of thing. I do think it's a little out of character for Katara to get like that annoyed at Aang being kind of better than her. I think the problem that this episode never addresses is that Katara has only barely had the experience of like properly, I suppose, being a bender, whereas Aang has had the experience of mastering like a whole element. He at the very least gets the idea of like, this is how you, when you have the ability to bend, apply it to do basic moves, and he knows like how you kind of manipulate your chi to do a bigger move. And I feel that this episode should have addressed that a little bit more. That just Aang's experience being a master bender, admittedly of a different element, is one of the reasons why he is kind of excels so easily at these techniques that Katara took so long to learn. Simply pointing that out would have been a really cool thing to address in the episode. That for Katara, it's going to take some time for her to get used to the idea of like gradually progressing in bending and learning how to apply the fact that she can manipulate her chi as a bender to doing more powerful moves, which would seem to be her problem here with the moves she was trying to perfect with the giant wave. And you have cool moments like them coming together, them stealing the ship by doing the push and pull with the water. Sokka ends up stealing the scroll in the end, and it just ends on the note of stealing's wrong unless it's from pirates. Aang buys the bison whistle in this episode, which is a cool moment. The pirate captain actually wanted to buy Momo because he recognized it as like a rare species of lemur that he could have gotten a lot of money for. The Zuko side of the episode is about primarily Iroh changes the course of the ship because he has lost his Lotus Tile for his Pai Sho game. And obviously at this stage they never fully really hint as to the importance of this beyond Iroh saying something like, a lot of people dismiss the Lotus Tile, but it's very important for the unusual strategy that I employ in this game. And Zuko's just like, what? We're abandoning our search for the Avatar to get a game piece? What is wrong with you? And then the humor at the end of the episode that they went to all of this trouble to get this White Lotus Tile, and it was in Iroh's sleeve the whole time. That was really, really funny. Iroh was really hilarious in the kind of side plot of this episode, with the whole idea of him just going shopping basically and not finding what he wanted, but ultimately finding all this other stuff he didn't know he wanted, and he got a good bargain on it. This is where the Sungi horn comes from, and so on. He ends up buying that statue with the kind of rubies in it, which is I think an Aladdin reference, if I remember correctly. There's a statue that looks identical to that, and I think Katara was looking very weirdly at it before, emphasizing the mystical powers that I think something like that had in Aladdin or whatever. Anything else in the episode? Not really. As I said, it has some, I think, major problems, just as I said, and going back to the start of just, it doesn't feel as like urgent as it should. It doesn't address waterbending in the importance that I thought it would have in relation to Aang learning the elements. And it ends up feeling like they put a lot of pretty cool concepts into an episode that they didn't do. They could have done more with. That it just feels like they wasted them all on this fairly low-key episode that isn't all that important. They do kind of set up the idea that like Katara is now aware that Zuko is the one who has, I suppose everyone is now aware that Zuko is the one who has Katara's necklace now, and that's fine. But other than that, another cabbage merchant appearance was pretty cool to see, but it's just a very, I think, average episode, and any episode of Avatar that's average instantly kind of means it's towards the bottom, because overall it is such a high quality show that any episode that doesn't really stand out goes towards the bottom. So I think it's fine. It's not the worst episode of the show, but it's not too far off from the bottom. And as I said, it starts a trend of episodes here that I think is pretty much the reason why I think most people would definitely say Book 1 is definitely the weakest book of Avatar. That it's just, there's no other point in the show where there's like a run of episodes like this, a sequence of episodes that just is so much lower quality than the rest of everything. So going to end the review for the Waterbending Scroll there. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode and what I had to say about it here. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.